Hello gentlefolk and welcome to the Knitted Wardrobe. It is a joy to have you here in the Knittery Nook. My name is Jenny, and if like me, this is your first time to the Knitted Wardrobes podcast, I would love for you to grab your hot cold beverage, pick up your knitting, take a seat on the sofa and join us as we start our very first YouTube podcast. So thank you for being here today. It's a joy, and for everybody who has followed me from Instagram, thank you so much for your encouragement and support, because without you, this really would not be happening. We start most Mondays, and I really do mean most, there are very few we miss now, over on the gram at 10:30, enjoying a coffee and setting our knitting intentions for the week. It's where we talk about all things knittery. So we talk about yarn, we talk about knitting projects, we talk about the best coffee we've got, what books we're reading, how our projects are going, and we just have a great time on Instagram Live. But what it doesn't do is give me a space to offer some in-depth thoughts on the designs I'm making at the moment or creating at the moment. It doesn't offer B-roll or editing skills, which are offered by Jeremy, my amazing editor, who has just got a job at the moment because of all the kit issues we've had. And also it doesn't give me the length of time sometimes to go in deep with all the things. So if you are up for the same kind of thing here, knitting, yarn, all the design work, all the works in progress, maybe some finished objects along the way, I don't know, and all the things about life, cats, books, you've come to the right place. So as I was getting ready for this podcast, I really wanted to set our intentions here now for the Knitted Wardrobe podcast. And I thought a great place to start would be at the very beginning with how I came to knitting. And here we have Finchley. So this is Finchley. Say hello, Finch. He's been obviously outside with his bottle brush tail, and Finchley's very much part of the Knitted Wardrobe. You will have definitely seen him on Instagram. He's definitely part of the tribe over there, so he may be in and out and probably knocking over stands and all the rest of it. But yes, you may see his little ears and tail at some point. So, as I was starting to get ready for this podcast, I was looking through a lot of my old design books, a lot of my old notebooks, and really trying to place a little kind of pin in the map on where I wanted to kind of like start this podcast with you on YouTube. And as I was going through it, I realised that my mum had actually left me the perfect place to start. And that was with this, the Encyclopedia of Knitting by James Norbury and Margaret Agata. And this was actually my nan's knitting book. And it's been on my bookshelf for a long time now. And on the inside, on the 27th of March, 2006, my mum has written, "To Jenny, this was my Ma's, from your Ma, enjoy. Look at the back page. I think it missed a generation. Ha." And then she has a picture of this wonderful child in many layers of knitting. And it says, "Life would be so much nicer if only my mother would stop knitting." Well, unfortunately for me, my mum didn't knit, but my nana did. And in the back page of the book, what we have here is my nana's writing. And it says, "Jenny's socks. Leg 6 inches, foot 3 3/4 to toe decrease. Jenny vest 9-inch arm, 3.5 vest top. Fennec, my one brother down, foot 4.5 inches." And then tucked in the back in here is more of Fennec's wonderful sock patterns that he was gifted. And it's just a lovely book of patterns. What I noticed actually, what was really interesting here, is how construction was laid out, but also how gauge swatches obviously weren't in here at all, and encyclopedia of knitting, and it's really beautiful. So thank you, Mum, always with us, as is Nana. Nana, I remember she was a great knitter, and she had metal needles that would just create jumpers in a day. They were wonderful, and I'm very blessed to still have my dad's cricket jumper. And I remember Nana actually being really miffed whenever he wore it. My dad loved it, but it has one cable somewhere that's the wrong way around. And it irritated her because she only noticed it when she had sewn it all up. All her knits were 100% acrylic. They could be shoved in the washing and tumble dryer. And I think that's fantastic. Acrylic is often given a bad name, but I think for kids' clothes, and absolutely for the generation she was knitting in, which was, I mean, I was born in 1980. It was definitely the thing to be using then. And they've gone very much away from the natural fibres. And I remember talking to my mum about it, and she said, yeah, it was just so exciting to be able to work with fibres that you didn't have to care for that much because it took a lot of the workload off. So that was great. But my mum did not knit, and my Nana did not teach me. My mum taught me how to sew really well. So I have a 90% handmade wardrobe, thanks to both women, really. And although my Nana didn't teach me how to knit, she definitely gave me the passion for fibre, I think. There's a great photo of me when I was 5 on Bamborough Beach up in Northumberland. And obviously August, because we went there in the summer typically. And I'm in this kind of like heavy cabled Aran jumper with a puffer jacket on top and a hat. And yeah, it was just nuts. But my Nana's knitting was definitely there. She, as I said, never taught me. But the idea of having handmade clothes was definitely part of my life growing up, and I really appreciate both women for giving me that passion. But my mum obviously wrote this in 2006, and it was actually great to find it the other day because I had been trying to remember when I started knitting, and I had spent a lot of time at the Royal School of Needlework learning embroidery for my dressmaking. And I remember I was in my local haberdashery shop and I had picked up some packets of silk, and I was embroidering a lot of oak leaves down a panelled dress from Vogue, and it was beautiful. I remember it now vividly. It was this beautiful dress. It was an enclosed bodice and then just very gentle linen silk, just kind of like panels over it. It fitted like a glove. It looked great. It was on this burnt orange silk linen with these oak leaves down one panel. Anyway, the shop assistant said, why don't you come and join us on our knitting evenings? And I said, well, I don't knit. She said, don't worry, bring your embroidery hoop and we can hang out anyway. And I did, and I met the most generous, beautiful people there. They were all older. They were all in their 60s and 70s. And this is back in 2004-5, I would imagine. Especially if Mum had written me that note in 2006. That means I was fully in my knitting by that time. But yeah, they were lovely. And after about 6 weeks, I went into the same shop and said, this week, can I learn how to cast on? And they said, absolutely. So I bought my first ball of Rowan, and they were a Rowan supplier. And so I bought my first ball and a pair of metal pins, and I learned a long tail cast on. And it took me hours. I remember just undoing it and doing it again. And now when I teach knitting classes, if we're starting a new knitting group, I will always give the first evening over just to cast on. Not even knit, no purling, we just cast on, get to know each other, have a lot of tea, eat a lot of cookies and have a giggle. So I loved it. And over 6 weeks, I basically learned how to do a gauge swatch, although we didn't do gauge swatches then. After about 6 weeks, my knitting and my purling were okay. The tension was good. But that's when my knitting teacher said, right, now you need to learn how to cable. So this is my notions tin. It's a Coleman's mustard tin, and it goes everywhere with me. It goes in my knitting bags when I travel. And I think that's the thing I love about knitting over sewing, is that you can take it anywhere. You can just pull it out in the pub and start knitting when you're with people, which you can't do with the sewing machine. But yeah, this is my notions tin. And inside it, I have my cable needles. 2 of them are at work at the moment, but these are the rest. And these little pins, I think they're from Brittany company. I don't even know if they're still going now, but these are the OG of cable needles for me, and I love them. This one's really dark, so this one I took to Oman with me to knit my brother Robin his very heavy black cabled 100% wool sweater, and it's a proper fisherman's jumper. It was a Rowan pattern. But yeah, that was in the Omani desert with a load of camels, and I was very hot, and I realised I had taken the wrong knitting project on holiday. Never again. So yes, these cable needles really taught me how to kind of like make knitting interesting. I could do the knits, I could do the pearls, that was great. But I love the fact that I learned how to cable basically on a dishcloth rather than even a sweater. And that led me to my first real project, because I wanted to practice, and also it was gift giving season. And I have 3 brothers, and my dad was still with us at the time. And I knitted everybody scarves. So I took the Stitch dictionary that I had purchased, and I must have been knitting for about 9 months at this point. And I'd done a pretty bad sweater, I would presume. Not that I have that now, but I definitely got some ideas of how to knit. And this is actually the one I knitted for my dad. And this is the propeller cable stitch. So this is the middle of the propeller, and these are the 2 wings. And it's huge. I love it. It needs, I found it actually the other day when I was clearing my mum's house, and it definitely needs some attention. But my dad got a purple one. My brother Jeremy got a bright red one. Fennec got a brown one, and Robin got a black one. And they all had their own particular cable. And I know my dad wore his loads. I don't know about my brothers. I think they were just very polite about them. But this really gave me the inspiration to start knitting off-grid. But I didn't know how to do it for a sweater, because we weren't really taught gauge swatching. So gauge swatching. For those who don't know, this is a gauge swatch. This is on Camel Yarns Intertidal in Hannah's Luxury DK. It's knitted on a 5mm needle, and it is a mixture of, let's see, I should know this off by heart now, superfine alpaca, merino and silk. And it's a wonderful colourway. I love what she's done here. And I am using this as inspiration for a new design for spring-summer 2024. So this gauge swatch tells me everything. So the knits there tell me how many stitches per inch and how many rows per inch, and all you can design anything off that mathematics at any size. If you take those measurements, you can work out any project you want to do. But back when I first learned, this wasn't a thing. And I remember seeing a pattern by Martin Story, who typically is published through Rowan. He's one of their pattern designers. But I had started reading blogs. So when I started knitting, YouTube wasn't a thing. We didn't even have an iPod. I remember when they came out, and that was all a bit novel. And now I listen to Spotify every day. But we didn't have much, but blogs were starting to become a thing. And I started reading about independent yarn dyers. And it's just like, I need that in my life. I'd been knitting for a while. I was getting fed up with the yarns that you bought with the patterns, and I just didn't know how to convert that. And I remember getting in touch with the Yorkshire Spinners, and bless their heart, they had a customer service woman who was just a dream. I said, I love your yarn, but I don't know how to convert the pattern to working with your yarn. And she said, well, you've done a gauge swatch, I imagine. It's like, what's that? And she took me through half an hour lesson on the phone on what a gauge swatch was, how it worked, how to get the right needles for the right size and tension and everything else. And I know that I will be making a video just on the power of your gauge swatch. And I got really passionate about them. I am very passionate about them. But these gauge swatches are just life support for any knitter. And you can refer back to them, and they make sure that your knitting is made for you. In whatever yarn, whatever needles you choose, you can knit the pattern that you want to. So, yes, suffice to say, I got into the independent yarn kind of like dyeing, purchasing scene. I've never dyed anything, but I do love the artwork that our dyers come out with. And from there, I just started knitting. And actually, I'm now wearing a sweater I created. It's the sweater with no name. It is actually my favourite at the moment. I knitted this in the dreaded L down back in 2020. And yeah, it's really simple. It's actually knit bottom up. And then I knit half the sleeves, and then you knit the sleeves and attach it there, and then you knit the top as a yoke, and then finish with a double folded collar. And this is a 1x1 rib. And I actually washed this the other day, because this part here is now encrusted. Makeup, you name it. It's had nearly 3-4 years of solid use. It's my absolute daily wear. And this was held, I held 2 yarns together for this, and I actually have some left. It's Cake Plates by Plucky Knitter, and I cannot remember the yarn content in that. And this is Sansa in L'Abbaye Amé. So colourway Sansa, L'Abbaye Amé, can never pronounce that right, in their merino single. And together, held together, they made this beautiful Marls colourway. This jumper needs a lot of attention. Needs debobbling and everything. But yeah, this kind of stuff allows you to kind of like just play with yarn, play with design. And if you want a super simple one like this one, the sweater with no name, then, you know, you can do it. You can absolutely do it. What brings me to the knitted wardrobe? Well, after knitting, designing for myself for so long, I ended up having the trip of a lifetime sea kayaking in Cornwall this May. So we're talking 16 weeks ago, I think. I think it's 16, 17 weeks ago. And I'd had the most fun adventures. It was fantastic. It was just life-changing. And I had been knitting on a pattern that I had started last year, so back in 22. And it was I had called it Cornish Path sweater back then. And it is a love story to the county that has totally stolen my heart. There is a long backstory to it, and we will go into that in another podcast when the pattern is released. But the Cornish Path sweater is definitely homage to the trails that have led me down to the West Country of England. And I just wanted to get it out there on other people's needles. I knew it was a really good design. I was really confident in its structure. And I wanted to pay homage to the history of Cornish knitting and the Guernsey sweaters. So it's knitted bottom up, and it has a gusset underneath here. And then it's a nice triangle, and then it's resolved here. So it goes up and then through until just about there on the arm. And it's heavy cabled with this deep roll neck. And I was sitting there in June having a coffee at my Airbnb, and I thought, no, I'm just going to do it. We're going to create the knitted wardrobe. I'm going to publish this thing. And if I had known then what I know now, I probably would never have done it, because it would have been totally overwhelming and way too scary. But I'm very pleased to say that it will be published on the 1st of November. So I have been working with Rachel Prest, my tech editor, who has been incredible, a bunch of wonderful test knitters who have just really helped us along the way. It's been absolute dream. I love it. So we've gone from learning how to knit dishcloths nearly 20 years ago to making my brothers, my dad, cabled scarves in the most amazing colours, to my own knits that I love and really treasure, which I will be sharing with you on this podcast over the weeks to come, to self-publishing the Cornish Path sweater. And I love the gentleness of that transition. It's been a really easy kind of like path. There's never been a part of it that I've been really terrified by. Even last week when none of the kits for the YouTube was working, it was just lovely to kind of like know that this was part of a story that was coming together. In the daytime, I find it really interesting when people say, oh, so you do this full time? It's like, I wish. That is definitely the goal for the future plans, but I run Cornerstone Therapies during the day, and I'm a physical rehab therapist. And I was looking through some of the knits I'll be sharing, but when I see my knits, I remember where I was when I did it. And there are a few there that I will have to find the pattern. It was the Alderman mitts, and I remember sitting at St Andrews, right near the golf club. There's the medical school, and I was there for the summer, learning anatomy through dissection with Gil Headley, and this was years ago now. And these mittens, I will always remember knitting them. And Laurie, who was my dissection partner, again over in New Jersey, when we were doing anatomy studies there, I remember knitting them there, and a very specific red Le Creuset mug that I had for breakfast. It was just what I just love how knitting reminds me of those times and those people, and they're very special memories. And I think that's one thing when you make something, you really put your heart and soul into it. And when you can remember where you've travelled to with that project and what it means to you, then of course you're never going to let it go. Saying that, I have not kept all my knits. A lot of them have ended up in kind of like charity shops where I've grown, or they're just not my size anymore. Some of them have been given away, and some of them, actually, I was in a house with really bad moth, and I lost a whole bunch of them. I lost about 20-30 sweaters to an infestation, which was heartbreaking, and that was around about 4 or 5 years ago. So I have some that I saved. I have others I had to let go or wanted to let go over the years, but I certainly don't have 20 years worth of knitting surrounding me, because I would be drowning right now. As far as yarn stash goes, I don't have a big one. My yarn stash is 2 baskets. One's, I'm looking at it now, one is filled with lovely stuff that are actually projects that will be made up in the near future. And the other one is actually filled with raw wool for a project that I'm designing for next year. So yes, if you haven't found raw wool, Anton down there, go check him out. And Oost wool as well, because I would like to start designing with some of their yarn for a very specific project as well. So I have kind of like working yarn, and then I have a little bit of play yarn, and yeah, it's all good. So what I'm really looking forward to in the next few months is starting the Bookery Book of the Month. The test knitting for the Cornish Path sweater has really taught me a few things, and also I have test knitted for other designers in the past, and I've really enjoyed the process, and when I've done it for other people it's been a real joy to be part of that community, and I've loved that feeling. But as a designer, on the other side of it, I just feel really bad that I wasn't able to give yarn support to my test knitters whilst they were knitting my design, because what test knitting involves is quite a lot of work. When I've test knitted before, when I receive a design, I know that it's going to be wrong. That's the whole point of me knitting it. And my job as a test knitter is to knit and give my comments on how the design is written, and let them know if the maths work, if the gauge swatch is right or if it's wrong, and all the things in between, right? So if I've got the right amount of stitches on my needles after they've told me to do something, that kind of thing. The inputs that I put in as a test knitter is about maybe an extra 5 to 8 hours over the knitting. And also I know that I'm going to have to put a load of lifelines in because I will be frogging back work, and there's a lot of there's a lot of involvement with test knitting. And I would like the Knitted Wardrobe to be able to offer yarn support and technical help to test knitters in the future. We have 4 or 5 patterns going out next year. All of them have to be test knitted, and I think that's a lot to ask anybody to help with when they're not getting supported from the designer. So the Bookery Book of the Month will be on Patreon, which I'm really excited about, and it's £10 a month, and you can come on there, and the first Tuesday of the month we will be talking about the books that we will choose, or we'll get somebody else to choose, but there will be books there, and the Patreons will be able to support the test knits and will allow the yarn to be sent to the test knitters, so that we can start building a community of really cherished knitters who are looked after in a very precious time of pattern design. And I just don't want anybody to feel taken for granted as they help us, or help me, grow this little design company. So we talk a lot about books on the Instagram Live, and I'm waiting for a couple to be sent to me from Mr. B's Emporium down in Bath. If you haven't heard of Mr. B's Emporium, go check them out. I've been a subscriber with them for years now. I filled less intense online dating forms out than their subscription form, I have to say. I feel that the guys who choose my books each month and send them to me know me better than myself, but they're sending 2 that I ordered this month. Robert Galbraith's new book, her Cormoran Strikes, I think his 7th book now. I'm really looking forward to that because the last one was terrible, but I really want to know what happened to Cormoran and Robin and their romantic endeavours in their private detective agency. And the other one is the new Richard Osman, because who's not waiting for that? So that's being delivered over the next few days, and so I picked up an impulse buy today. Ken Follett, The Armour of Light, and it's part of the Kingsbridge or Pillars of the Earth series. I think this is book 5 now. Really looking forward to this. If you haven't read Pillars of the Earth, your bookshelf is missing out. You need that in your life. It's such a good book. And all the ones that come afterwards. There is also a prequel, which I really enjoyed. So we will be talking all things books from beginning, middle of November onwards, and I cannot wait for that. So that's really excited me. We won't be reading this, though. We will have more information about the Bookery Book of the Month and the book club in a couple of episodes' time. I have just finished the Cornish Path sweater take 2, which I've really enjoyed. I'm not going to put pictures here yet because we actually have the official photo shoot next week with Hebs, a really great friend of mine. We're off to the beach and we're going to be taking all the beauty shots of the Cornish Path sweater. And yes, that actually came off my needles last night and I'm very excited for it. So yeah, that will be fantastic. And so the next thing on my needles is actually, I feel my shoulders drop already. It's something I've been wanting to knit for a while, and it's the Girl's Best Friend shawl pattern by Isabel Kramer. And I think I found it originally back in 2017 through Loop of London, they are just the most beautiful yarn shop. I also love We Are Knitters, who in Pimlico, both shops, if I'm ever up in London, I'll try and visit both. They are just incredible. Very, very different vibes, but both of them beautiful. But I found that shawl pattern back in 2017. And I also stalk Beth from Telling Yarns, and I found her in real life as Unravelled in Farnham, which is my local yarn festival, which runs in the late winter and early autumn. So I was at the September one a couple of weeks ago with Sarah from the Knit Pod, and I found these beauties, and aren't they beautiful? They are definitely the winter version of my summer wardrobe. So we've got a really lovely dark pink. I'm really going for these colours at the moment. As you can tell, this is the intertidal, the summer version from the Camel's Yarn, but this is from Beth, and this really dark one. So it's a 3-coloured shawl, and the only thing I won't be doing is making the pom-poms. I'm not a pom-pom girl, but I will be doing the bobbles. It has bobbles on one of the longer strips, so I'm just going to take a week to do one row of bobbles, because bobbles are a pain in the ass, but beautiful once they're done. So Telling Yarns, I really love non-superwash yarn, and yes, it's for the fact that it's not got any plastic in, but mainly, and that's a whole debate, right? I don't really want to get into that. I will save that for another one, and it will probably be a standalone video, so we can just turn off the comments, because that is, yeah. Anyway, but I love non-played with yarn because you can manipulate it so much. It's just, there's something about just wool that I love. So Anton down in Cornwall, Beth, Oost up in Scotland, there are some lovely raw wool, proper woolly, sheepy sheep, and it's not scratchy. If you get the right micron counts, which Anton actually can really fill you in on, I'll leave him to talk about it actually, because what he doesn't know about micron counts is not worth knowing. But I love Beth's work because she works on 100% wool, and this is Blueface Leicester, Romney, Masham, and Zertbat, the one I can never pronounce. I butcher names, that's the other thing you should know about me. This one is Dreamfire from Game of Thrones, so I was very happy about that. I'm Game of Thrones, I am part of the Night's Watch, so that one's Dreamfire. This one is from Game of Thrones as well, Tyrex's, so that lovely pink. And I love Beth because she, this is also on her Resolute. Only in knitting can you say fingering and not be rude. This is on the fingering yarn, Resolute base, and all her yarns are named after characters or literature in literature. And this one is from The Witcher, Keir Moran, and it's a lovely charcoaly green. there is definitely a green undertone in that. I'm in love with it. And the Girl's Best Friend's shawl, it's quite lightweight. I think it'll be quite snuggly. In Isabel Kramer's photos, it's very light. It's a very light photography, which I really appreciate. It's definitely my vibe. But actually for winter, I wanted something that was a bit deeper. So these darker colours for me and my wardrobe are going to be fantastic. So I am actually going to make these into little balls of wool and cast that on probably this weekend actually, and just really enjoy a couple of weeks of knitting someone else's pattern before I get started on my next design, which there are 2 that I'll be working on through November and December, and test calls will go out in January, I would imagine. So it's all kind of like there. It's all kind of like flowing, which is beautiful. I love the process. I think the process of design, once I got my head around the fact that actually you're designing for 6 months' time. So the next release from the Knitted Wardrobe will be in April. So, and then we'll have another one in June. So, and then we'll get into the autumn winter collection for next year, which is already actually being sampled for, which is phenomenal. But once I had got over the fact that the Cornish Path sweater has come out incredibly quickly for a knitwear design, a home knitting design. And yes, I have been surprised at that there may be another one. I wasn't expecting that at all. And I'm very pleased that there will be. I honestly thought it may be a one-off, but actually the reaction I've had and the comments I've had and the lovely conversations I've had with yarn producers and other designers, that this is definitely going to be something that's going to be here to stay. It's just been a joy. And yes, once I'd actually wrapped my head around what is going to be as far as the Knitted Wardrobe and upcoming designs, I just can't stop smiling about it. It's such a privilege. And to be here with you, talking about it and sharing it and hearing all your comments, and just knowing that there's such a nurturing community in the knitting world is just lovely. So I think for our first hello meet and greet, this is probably where I'm going to end it. Thank you so much for making the time to hang out, and thank you for bearing with us. The kits will get better, we'll get better cameras, much better audio. I have actually got 2 studio lights looking at me now, which I decided to turn off because I just didn't know how to use them properly. So I am also taking lessons on Skillshare and every other platform I can come across about how to set all this up and do it properly. But thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your knitting time with me. I cannot wait to hear what you are knitting and what's on your needles. Follow me at The Knitted Wardrobe over on Instagram, _knitted_wardrobe. And yeah, show me your projects and say hello. It'll be great to meet you over there. And I shall see you in the next one in 2 weeks' time. So have a great time until then. May your needles be blessed and may your frogging be rare. Take care. Bye.